Okay, this is going to be the overview for Chapter 13, where we're going to cover alcohol. It's a very important chapter. You may question covering a chapter like this because people typically, in their minds, place alcohol in a different place than they do these illegal substances that we've been covering chapter by chapter. But the truth is that alcohol is a drug, a psychoactive substance, just like any other. And yes, it has legal status, but more and more so does marijuana. And prescription drugs, for example, have legal status. But the issue in this course is psychoactive drugs, whether they're legal or not legal, and also, in particular, if there are occasions to talk about connections with crime and violence, we want to talk about those. And alcohol in particular is important when we're talking about connections to criminality, especially violence. So that makes it an important topic and an important chapter to cover. So let's jump into some basics here. Okay, there are three basic types of alcoholic beverages: wine, beer, and distilled spirits. Now that's keeping it simple, but it actually is a good kind of basic fact to get out there because one thing that the chapter doesn't really cover, but I'll mention here, is that these three types of alcoholic beverages tend to be different in terms of their problematic nature, or how much problem drinking goes on with these three different types. And what you find is, I'll just say it up front since it's really not stressed a lot in the chapter, is that wine of the three here is the type of alcoholic beverage that's sort of least likely to be correlated, associated with problematic behavior. And this probably speaks to the sort of social context or the cultural context in which alcoholic beverages are consumed too, because you could say, well, hold it, wine is an alcoholic beverage just the same as beer and distilled spirits. As a matter of fact, it's got higher alcohol content in it than beer does. So shouldn't it be the problematic or the second most problematic drink, more so than beer? Again, this speaks to the sort of context, the social context. Beer is consumed in settings, social settings, and by people who are more likely to behave in problematic ways. So, to make this a little bit clearer, you could say that there's a little bit more of a tilt in wine drinking among higher social status people, among women versus men, and it's men and lower social status individuals who are more likely to engage in sort of problematic behavior along with their drinking. And so I'm not saying that there's never any problematic behavior with wine. We're just talking about statistical tendencies here. So it does depend on sort of the people who are drinking it and the settings in which it's consumed. Are they social settings where conducive to problematic behavior, to reckless behavior, to violence, which we're particularly concerned about in this course? Distilled spirits is like beer is going to be more closely correlated with problem behavior than wine. Let me also say, since we're on this topic that's not really being covered a lot in the chapter, you can kind of see the patterns or certain patterns of drinking that tend to go along with these different types of alcoholic beverages. And also, if we focus on Europe, kind of it gives us a good geographical survey of how these beverages tend to be consumed. First of all, let's start from the south and move north. If you're talking about the southern region of Europe, you tend to get more wine drinking in, say a country like Italy or Greece, that you tend to see wine consumed a lot. And of course, there are historical reasons for that. These are warmer regions where you're more likely to see grapes grown, and then those grapes turn into wine. And so this Mediterranean style of drinking that goes along with wine is that people will have a glass or two of wine with a meal, say with dinner. And if you were to add up all of the drinks that they have in a week, say that they had two drinks with the evening meal, and they did that 7 nights in a row, 7 nights in a week, then that would be 7 multiplied by 2 is 14 drinks in a week. You could have a similar behavior in beer drinking areas, which is be more likely to be as we're moving north to sort of the middle portion of Europe as we're moving north to south in a country like Germany or in a country like Great Britain, where beer is heavily consumed. It's also might be drink quite a bit with meals, or it's done in this sort of regular sort of way, and where you have a couple of drinks. Now, of course, some people are excessive and will drink many drinks and get really drunk, but there's this tendency um, to drink in these countries, beer in these countries, with a certain amount of limitation, and maybe drinking throughout the week, maybe a little heavier on the weekends, but still sort of like some drinking spread out be over the entire week. Let's say that you get a similar sort of result of, let's just say 14 drinks in a week that are sort of spread out through the week and the weekend. As we move north to the northern European countries, there you see shift towards drinking distilled spirits, vodka, for example. And along with that style of drinking these distilled spirits, this heavy, liquor, that you're more likely to get binge drinking, where maybe the person in Sweden, some Scandinavian country, you'll see this binge drinking where you're drinking many drinks all in one occasion, sort of close to each other. So you might not drink all week long, but then when the weekend hits, you binge, and you're binging vodka. Say you have more than five drinks all in one setting. You do that a couple of nights. Say you did that, Friday and Saturday, and let's say between the two nights you had 14 drinks, in over 2 nights. And so, you could see that the total number of drinks with my examples here all equals 14. But in the southern and middle countries, it got spread out more, consumed more with meals and more spread out throughout the week and the weekend, compared to this sort of binge drinking style that you'll more often see in northern European countries, or in like Eastern European country like Russia. You see more of this binge style drinking, and it is more likely with the binge style drinking to be more problematic, to be, to turn into a dependency problem, to an alcoholism problem, to a behavior problem when you're getting really, really intoxicated with many drinks. So that northern style is the more problematic pattern of drinking. Anyway, so that's just to sort of lay at some patterns of sort of drinking, especially as they're sort of illustrated by European countries. Let's move on. The psychoactive element in ethyl alcohol, also known as ethanol, ethyl alcohol is a very small molecule that is moderately soluble in fat and highly soluble in water. So we're just talking about how it can dissolve in fat, it can be highly soluble in water. That makes it easily absorbed through the gastrointestinal tract and easily absorbed into the brain. So this is a kind of drug that's quite easily absorbed both into the GI tract and into the brain. About 20% of it enters the bloodstream directly from the stomach, whereas the remaining 80%, most of it, enters from the upper portion of the small intestine. If the stomach is empty when you drink, the intoxicating effect or the buzz will be felt very quickly or faster than if you had a full stomach. If the stomach is full, absorption will be delayed as the alcohol is retained by the stomach along with the food being digested, and the passage of alcohol into the small intestine slows down. So, long story short here is if your stomach's full, the alcohol is moved more slowly into the small intestines, and therefore is digested more slowly. So the intoxicating effect takes more time and slower. The principal factor is the concentration of alcohol in the beverage being ingested. That's pretty common sense right there, that the intoxication is going to tend to be greater if there's more alcohol, a higher concentration of the alcohol in the beverage. So, so the distilled spirits is going to sort of affect this process of becoming intoxicated because it's by far the most concentrated of these different main types of alcohol. An ounce of 80 proof liquor, equivalent to an alcohol content of 40%, will be felt more quickly than 1 ounce of wine containing 12% alcohol, which is pretty typical range area there for wine. And of course, the level of alcohol in the blood will be higher as well. So that's just a common sense idea there. More concentration, more intoxicating effect, more alcohol in the blood. If the alcoholic beverage is carbonated, as in the case of champagne and other sparkling wines, the stomach will empty its contents faster and effects will be felt sooner. So that accelerates the process of the stomach emptying its contents. If the alcohol content enters the body at a rapid pace, such as when drinks are consumed in quick succession, the level of alcohol in the blood will be higher because the liver cannot eliminate it fast enough. So to get to the specific physiological reasons why drinking fast, rapidly, is going to increase your blood alcohol level, is that the liver gets overwhelmed. And so because the liver is in charge of sort of processing, breaking down this alcohol, and then moving it along, breaking it down into its metabolites, moving it along. But it's limited in what it can do. It can't do it fast enough, so the alcohol gets built up, doesn't get metabolized, and the level in the alcohol or in the blood, level of alcohol in the blood becomes higher. All other factors being equal, a larger person requires a larger amount of alcohol to have the equivalent levels accumulating in the blood, simply because there are more body fluids to absorb the alcohol, thus diluting the overall effect. So size matters. Bigger people, it's going to require more alcohol for them to get the same level of intoxication. The excretion of alcohol is accomplished in two basic ways. About 5% will be eliminated by the lungs through exhalation. So you're breathing out. When you're breathing out when you're drinking, there's going to be a little bit of alcohol content in the breath, causing the characteristic alcohol breath of heavy drinkers. Okay, let's stop there. We'll continue on with some of these basics in part 2.